stand for the motto? You may be seated.
We on? There we go. The Barcode Service. Our goal is to fulfill our call to guard the commandments of Torah and to have the testimony that Messiah Yehoshua is the Redeemer of Israel. The holiness of the day. Moshe rejoiced in the gift of his portion that you placed on his head when he stood before you on Mount Sinai. He brought down 2 stone tablets in his hand, on which is inscribed the observance of the Sabbath. So it is written in the Torah. All the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to make the Sabbath an eternal covenant for their generations. Between me and the children of Israel, it is a sign forever that in the 6 days Yehovah made heaven and earth, and on the 7th day he rested and was refreshed. You did not give it, Yehovah, our El, to the nations of the land, nor did you make it the inheritance, our King, of the worshippers of graven idols. And in its contentment the uncircumcised shall not abide. For to you, Israel, your people, you have given it in love, to the seed of Yaakov, whom you have chosen. They shall rejoice in your kingship, those who observe the Sabbath. They will all be satisfied and delighted from your goodness. And the 7th you found favor in it and sanctified it. Most coveted of days you called it, a remembrance of the act of creation. Our El and the El of our forefathers, may you be pleased now with our rest. Sanctify us with your commandments, and grant our share in your Torah. Satisfy us from your goodness, and gladden our souls with your salvation, and purify our hearts to serve you sincerely. O Yehovah our El, with love and favor, grant us your holy Sabbath as a heritage, and may all Israel, the sanctifiers of your name, rest on it. Blessed are you, Yehovah, who sanctifies the Sabbath. Tehillim 119, 1 through 19, or Psalms. Blessed are the perfect in the way, who walk in the Torah of Yehovah. Blessed are those who observe his witness, who seek him with all the heart. Yes, they shall do no unrighteousness. They shall walk in his ways. You have commanded us to guard your orders diligently. Oh, that my ways were established to guard your laws. Then I would not be ashamed when I look into all your commands. I thank you with uprightness of heart when I learn the right rulings of your righteousness. I shall guard your laws. Oh, do not leave me entirely. How would a young man cleanse his path, to guard it according to your word? I have sought you with all my heart. Let me not stray from your commands. I have treasured up your word in my heart, that I might not sin against you. Blessed are you, O Yehovah, teach me your laws. With my lips I have recounted all the right rulings of your mouth. I have rejoiced in the way of your witness, as over all riches. I meditate on your orders and regard all your ways. I delight myself in your laws. I do not forget your word. Do good to your servant. Let me live, and I guard your word. Open my eyes that I might see wonders in your Torah. I am a sojourner in the earth. Do not hide your commands from me. The Baruch. Blessed Yehovah, the Blessed One. Blessed is Yehovah, the Blessed One, for all eternity. Baruch et Yehovah Hambarak. Baruch Yehovah Hambarak Leolam Vayed. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of Yehovah your Elohim. In it you shall not do any work. For in 6 days Yehovah made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. That is why Yehovah blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Speak also unto the children of Israel, saying, Above all my Sabbaths you shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I am Yehovah who sanctifies you. And if you do turn back your foot from the Sabbath, from doing your pleasure on my set-apart day, and shall call the Sabbath a delight, the set-apart day of Yehovah esteemed, and shall esteem it, not doing your own pleasure, nor speaking your own words, then you shall delight yourself in Yehovah. And I shall cause you to ride on the heights of the earth, and feed you with the inheritance of Yaakov your father, for the mouth of Yehovah has spoken. Isaiah 58:13-14. And the blessing over our children. We have several here today. Ready? Okay. Blessing over our children. Over our sons, Yisamek, Elohim, Ke'ephraim, Bakim, Naseh. May Elohim make you as Ephraim and Manasseh. And over our daughters, Yisamek, Elohim, Kesarah, Rivkah, Rachel, Valeah. May Elohim make you as Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah. Start children off on the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it. Father, open their eyes that they may see wonders from your Torah. Listen, children, to your father's instruction, and do not forsake your mother's teaching, for they are a fair wreath on your head, and chains to adorn your neck. For I know the plans I have for you, declares Yehovah, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Children, may you flee the evil desires of youth and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on Yehovah out of a pure heart. Finally, children, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things to protect your mind and soul from Hasatan, that you may be blessed beyond measure. Sons, may you grow to be men of righteousness, like trees whose roots run deep in life-giving water, that you may you be in the Torah of Yehovah. Daughters, may you come to be courageous women and capable wives whose value are worth far beyond rubies, guiding those in your care in spirit and Torah. Amen. Please stand for the Messiah prayer. Blessed are you, Yehovah, who has given us the way of salvation in Messiah Yehoshua. He walked among us filled with your Spirit, the only one who ever fulfilled your Torah perfectly. He healed the sick and raised the dead. The multitudes of our people sought his touch. He taught as no other man taught, bringing forth the treasures of the Torah with authority. How the children sought him, the lepers he touched and made clean. How the despised and the outcast found love and release from their sin. How the hypocrites feared him whose words uncovered their sin. Despised and rejected, acquainted with grief, he bore the sins of Israel. All of us like sheep went astray, turned every one to his own way. Our iniquities were laid upon our king. The sins of this world became his burden to bear. He rose from the dead and opened the way to life everlasting. Praise be to his name. We are in him. His spirit empowers. New life is ours with joy and peace. Baruch atah Yehovah Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu aderech hayeshua b'Mashiach Yehoshua. Amen. Blessed are you, Yehovah our Elohim, King of the universe, who has given us the way of salvation in Messiah Yehoshua. Amen. And the blessing of the Shema. Baruch atah Yehovah Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvorech forsech oseh shalom uvoreh ra. Blessed are you, Yehovah our Elohim, King of the universe, who forms light and creates darkness, makes peace and creates evil. Isaiah 45:7. Yes. And the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Yahovah Eloheinu, Yahovah Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod, Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. Hear, O Israel, Yahovah Eloheinu, Yahovah is one. Blessed is the name of his glorious kingdom for all eternity. Amen. Deuteronomy 6:4. Now the Vahavtah. Vahavtah et Yehovah Elohecha, v'kol levavka, uvkol nashtika, uvkol me'adeka. Vahayu hadavarim ha'ele asher anoki matzavaka hayom al levaveka, v'shinantam levaneka. V'dibartam bam b'shiptika, bevteka, uvlekbeka, vaderek, uvshakbeka, uvkomeka, ushartam leod al yadeka, vahayu letotefot bain aneka, uvtatam al mezuzot beteka, uvisha reka. And you shall love Yehovah your Elohim with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And have these words which I command you this day be upon your heart. And you shall teach them diligently to your children, and speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you retire, and when you arise. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and let them be frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and upon your gates. V'havtah l'reacha chomoka, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Amen. And please join us for praise and worship.
Y'all, we all bailed on the worship team today, so everybody sing loud and help them out.
up here. Oh, something happened. Okay, sorry.
It's on. Blessed be your name in a land that is plentiful, where streams of abundance flow. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name when I'm found in a desert place. Though I walk through the wilderness, blessed be your name. Every blessing you pour out, I'll turn back to praise. When the darkness closes in, still I will say, blessed be the name of Yahweh. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of Yahweh. Blessed be your glorious name. Blessed be your name. The sun shining down on me, and the world's all as it should be. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name on a road marked with suffering, those pain in the offering. Blessed be your name. Every blessing you pour out, I'll turn back to praise. When the darkness closes in, still I will say, blessed be the name of Yahweh. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of Yahweh. Blessed be your glorious name. You give and take away. You give and take away. My heart will choose to say, Lord, blessed be your name. You give and take away. You give and take away. My heart will choose to say, Lord, blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of Yahweh. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of Yahweh. Blessed be your glorious name. Blessed be the name of Yahweh. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of Yahweh. Blessed be your glorious name. You give and take away. have set watchmen, I have set watchmen on your walls, O Jerusalem. Who shall ever hold their peace? On your walls, O Jerusalem, I have set watchmen, I have set watchmen. On your walls, O Jerusalem, who shall never hold their peace? Day or night, day or night, I have set watchmen on your walls. Day or night, day or night, I have set watchmen on your walls. Till he establishes, till he makes Jerusalem a praise in the earth. Till he establishes, till he makes Jerusalem a praise in the earth. Kahom Matai, Kahom Matai, Kahom Matai, Kakali Tishorim. Kahom Matai, Kahom Matai, Kahom Matai, Kakali Tishorim. You who make mention of Yahweh, do not keep silent, do not keep silent. On your walls, O Jerusalem, who shall ever hold their peace? Day or night, day or night, I have set watchmen on your walls. Day or night, day or night, I have set watchmen on your walls. Till he establishes, until he makes Jerusalem a praise in the earth. Till he establishes, till he makes Jerusalem a praise in the earth. You who make mention of Yahweh, do not keep silent, do not keep silent. On your walls, O Jerusalem, who shall never hold their peace? Day or night, day or night, I have set watchmen on your walls. Day or night, day or night, I have set watchmen on your walls. Till he establishes, until he makes Jerusalem a praise in the earth. Till he establishes, till he makes Jerusalem a praise in the earth. Kahom Matai, Kahom Matai, Kahom Matai, Kakari Tishorim. Kahom Matai, Kahom Matai, Kahom Matai, Kakari Tishorim. Establishes, till he makes Jerusalem a praise in the earth. Till he establishes, till he makes Jerusalem a praise in the earth. On your walls, O Jerusalem, I have set watchmen, I have set watchmen. On your walls, O Jerusalem, who shall never hold their peace. I see the King of Glory coming on the clouds with fire. The whole earth shakes, the whole earth shakes. Yeah, yeah. I see his love this service and this teaching we'll have today, and continue with us right now. In the name of Yeshua, amen.
I do. I found it here. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom. All right. For the Torah service here, there is to be one Torah for the native born and for the stranger who sojourns among you. These Bamidbars are numbered 15, verse 16. If you'll join me for the Ein Kamoka. Ein Kamoka Velohim Yehovah V'ein Kemaseka Malkuka Malku Kolamim Umemshalteka V'kol Dor V'dor Yehovah Melech Yehovah Malach Yehovah Himlo Le'olam V'yed Yehovah Otzle Moitein Yehovah Yevarek Eramo V'Shalom. There is none like you among their gods, Yehovah, and there is nothing like your works. Your kingdom is a kingdom throughout all generations, and your dominion is forever. Yehovah reigns, Yehovah has reigned, Yehovah will reign forever and ever. Yehovah will give strength to his people. Yehovah will bless his people with peace. And this is a Vayehi. Vayehi ben so ha'aron ve'omer Moshe Kuma Yehovah ve'afutzu oiveka ve'anusu mesaneka mepaneka ki mitzion teze Torah ki mitzion teze Torah udevar Yehovah meYerushalayim Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Le'amo Yisrael V'Yekushuato. When the ark would travel, Moshe would say, Arise, Yehovah, and let your enemies be scattered, and let those who hate you flee from you. For the Torah will go forth from Zion, and the word of Yehovah from Jerusalem. Blessed is he who gave the Torah to his people Israel in his holiness. Amen. Hava May the Father of compassion have mercy on the nation that is born by him. And may he remember the covenant of the spiritually mighty. May he rescue our souls from the bad times and upbraid the evil inclination to leave those born by him. Graciously make us an eternal remnant and fulfill our request in good measure for salvation and mercy. May he help shield and save all who take refuge in him. Now let us respond.
Amen.
All of you who ascribe greatness to our Elohim and give honor to the Torah, arise, Yochanan ben Levi, an Israelite, and come to the bema to read from the Torah. Blessed is he who gave the Torah to his people Israel in his holiness. Baruch. Baruch et Yehovah Hamarah. Baruch atah Yehovah Eloheinu melech haolam asher bakar benu makol hamanim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Yehovah
Notain HaTorah.
Notain HaTorah.
Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh Elohim, King of the universe, who has chosen us from all peoples and given us his Torah. Blessed are you, Yahweh, giver of the Torah.
We're reading today from Midbar, or Numbers, chapter 24, the entire chapter, and 25, verses 1 through 6. And when Balaam saw that it pleased Jehovah to bless Israel, he did not go out as other times to seek and to use sorcery, but he set his face toward the wilderness. And Balaam lifted up his eyes and saw Israel encamped according to their tribes, and the spirit of Elohim came upon him. And he took up his proverb and said, the saying of Balaam, son of Beor, and the saying of the man whose eyes are open, the saying of him who hears the words of El, who sees the vision of the Almighty, who falls down with eyes open wide. How good are your tents, O Jacob, your dwellings, O Israel. Like wadis that stretch out, like gardens by a river, like aloes planted by Jehovah, like cedars beside waters. He makes water flow from his buckets, and his seed is in many waters. The sovereign is higher than Agag, and his reign is exalted. El, who brought him out of Mitzrayim, is for them like the horns of a wild ox. He devours nations, his enemies, and he breaks their bones, and with his arrows he smites. He bowed down, he lay down like a lion. And like a lion, who would rouse him? Blessed is he who blesses you, and cursed is he who curses you. Then the displeasure of Balak turned against Balaam, and he struck his hands together. Balak said to Balaam, I summon you to curse my enemies, and see, you've kept on blessing these 3 times. And now flee to your place. I said I would greatly esteem you, and see, Jehovah has kept you back from esteem. And Balaam said to Balak, did I not also speak to your messengers whom you sent to me, saying, if Balak should give me his house filled with silver and gold, I am unable to go beyond the word of Jehovah, to do either good or evil in my own heart. What Jehovah speaks, that I speak. And now, see, I am going to my people. Come, let me advise you what this people is going to do to your people in the latter days. And he took up his proverb and said, the saying of Balaam, son of Beor, and the saying of the man whose eyes are open, the saying of him who hears the words of El and knows the knowledge of the Most High, who sees the vision of the Almighty, and falls down with eyes open wide. I see him, but not now. I observe him, but not near. A star shall come out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and shall smite the corners of Moab, and shall destroy the sons of Sheth. And Edom shall be a possession, and Zair shall be a possession, enemies, and Israel is doing mightily. And out of Jacob one shall rule and destroy the remnant from Ar. He then looked on Amalek, and he took up his proverb and said, Amalek was first among the nations, but his latter end is to perish forever. He then looked at the Canaanites, and he took up his proverb and said, firm is your dwelling place, and your nest is set in the rock. But Canaan is to be burned. Till when does Asher keep you active? And then he took up his proverb and said, oh, who does live when El does this? And ships shall come from the coast of Kittim, and they shall afflict Asher and afflict Aber, and so shall Amalek, and he also perishes. And Balaam arose and left, and returned to his place, and Balak also went his way. And Israel dwelt in Shittim, and the people began to whore with the daughters of Moab. And they invited the people to the slaughterings of the mighty ones, and the people ate and bowed down to their mighty ones. Thus Israel was joined to Baal Peor, and the displeasure of Jehovah burned against Israel. And Jehovah said to Moshe, take all the leaders of the people and hang them up before Jehovah, before the sun, so that the burning displeasure of Jehovah turns away from Israel. And Moshe said to the judges of Israel, each one of you killed his men who were joined to Baal Peor. And see, one of the children of Israel came and brought to his brothers a Midianite woman before the eyes of Moshe and before the eyes of all the congregation of the children of Israel, who were weeping at the door of the tent of appointment. And now the Maftir, chapter 25, verses 7 through 9. And when Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, saw it, he rose from among the congregation, took a spear in his hand, and he went after the men of Israel into the tent and thrust both of them through, the man of Israel and the woman through her belly. Thus the plague among the children of Israel came to a stop, and those who died in the plague were 24,000.
Closing Torah blessing. Baruch atah Yehovah Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah amen v'chaye olam neta b'tukenu Baruch atah Yehovah Noten HaTorah Noten HaTorah Amen. Blessed are you, Yehovah our Elohim, King of the universe, who has given us the Torah of truth and planted eternal life in our midst. Blessed are you, Yehovah, giver of the Torah. He who blessed our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, may he bless Yochanan ben Levi, as he's come up to read from the Torah in honor of Yehovah and his word. As a reward for this, may the Holy One, blessed is he, protect him and rescue him from every trouble and distress, from every plague and illness, and may he send blessing and prosperity in his every endeavor, together with all Israel, his brethren. Now let us respond. Amen. If you'll join me for the Vezot. Vezot HaTorah Asher Sam Moshe Lifnei B'nei Israel Al Pei Yehovah Biad Moshe. And this is the Torah that Moshe placed before the children of Israel at the command of Yehovah through Moshe's hand. Return, O Yehovah, to the countless thousands of Israel. Now be seated. I'd like to now call Daphne about Abraham to the bema to read from the Haftarah. Baruch atah Yehovah Eloheinu melech haolam asher bakar b'nvi'im tovim v'ritzah b'devarim hane'amarim be'emet. Baruch atah Yehovah Haboker b'Torah u'Moshe avdo u'Yisrael amo u'minvi'ei haemet v'zedek. Blessed are you, Yehovah our Elohim, King of the universe, who has selected good prophets and was pleased with their words which were spoken truthfully. Blessed are you, Yehovah, who chooses the Torah, your servant Moshe, your people Israel, and prophets of truth and righteousness.
It's Micah 5:6 through 6:8. Sorry about that. And they shall shepherd the land of Asher with the sword, and the land of Nimrod at its entrances. And he shall deliver us from Asher when he comes into our land, and when he treads within our borders. And the remnant of Jacob shall be in the midst of many peoples, as dew from Yahweh, as showers on the grass, which do not wait for man, nor delay for the sons of men. And the remnant of Jacob shall be among the nations, in the midst of many peoples, like a lion among the beasts of a forest, like a young lion among flocks of sheep, who, if he passes through, shall both tread down and shall tear, and there is no one to deliver. Let your hand be lifted up against your adversaries, and all your enemies be cut off. And it shall be in that day, declares Yahweh, that I shall cut off your horses out of your midst, and I shall destroy your chariots. And I shall cut off the cities of your land, and I shall pull down all your strongholds. And I shall cut off witchcrafts out of your hand, and let you have no magicians. And I shall cut off your carved images and your pillars from your midst, so that you no longer bow down to the work of your hands. And I shall pluck your Asherim out of your midst, and I shall destroy your cities. And I shall take vengeance in wrath and rage on the nations who did not obey. Hear now what Yahweh is saying. Arise, strive with the mountains, and let the hills hear your voice. Hear, O ye mountains, the controversy of Yahweh, and you everlasting foundations of the earth. For Yahweh has a controversy with his people, and he shall reprove Israel. My people, what have I done to you? And how have I wearied you? Answer me. For I brought you up out of the land of Mitzrayim, and I ransomed you from the house of bondage. And I sent Moshe, Aharon, and Miriam before you. My people, remember please what Balak son of Moab counseled, and what Balaam son of Beor answered him, from Shittim to Gilgal, in order to know the righteousness of Yahweh. With what shall I come before Yahweh, bow myself before the high Elohim? Shall I come before him with ascending offerings, with calves a year old? Is Yahweh pleased with thousands of rams, or 10,000 rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my being? He has declared to you, O man, what is good. And what does Yahweh require of you but to do right, and to love loving commitment, and to walk humbly with your Elohim?
Baruch atah Yehovah, Eloheinu melech haolam, zur kol ha'amim, tzedek kol ha'nerod, ha'el ha'ne'eman, ha'omer v'oseh, amdabar kayam, shekol devarah, emet v'zedek, ni'aman, atahu Yehovah Eloheinu, v'ne'amanim devarecha, v'devareka midbarecha, akol yeshurekam, ki el melech ni'aman, v'rakaman atah, baruch atah Yehovah, ha'el ha'ne'aman, v'kol devarah. Blessed are you, Yehovah, our Elohim, King of the universe, rock of all eternity, faithful in all generations, who says and does, who speaks and makes it come to pass, all of whose words are true and righteous. Faithful are you, Yehovah, our Elohim, and faithful are your words, for not one word of yours was turned back unfulfilled. For you are faithful, El and King. Blessed are you, Yehovah, the Elohim, who is faithful in all his words. He who blessed our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, may he bless Daphne, about Abraham, because she is to come up to read from the Haftarah. As a reward for this, may the Holy One, the Father of our Messiah, blessed is he, protect her and rescue her from every illness, and may he send blessing and success in her every endeavor, together with all Israel, her brethren. Now let us respond.
Amen.
I'd like to call Jared Ben Abraham to read from the second writings, Brit Hadashah. Baruch atah Yehovah, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Mashiach Yehoshua, v'ha'ketivim v'ha'atim. Baruch atah Yehovah, noten ha'brit ha'torah. Blessed are you, Yehovah, our Elohim, King of the universe, who has given us Messiah Yehoshua and the writings of the Talmudim. Blessed are you, Yehovah, giver of the covenant of the Torah.
All right, it's Romans 11:25 through 32. For I do not wish you to be ignorant of the secret, brothers, lest you should be wise in your own estimation, that hardening in part has come over Israel until the completeness of the nations has come in. And so all Israel shall be saved. As it has been written, the deliverer shall come out of Zion, and he shall turn away wickedness from Jacob. And this is my covenant with them when I take away their sins. Truly, as regard the good news, they are enemies for your sake, but concerning the choice, they are beloved for the sake of the fathers. For the gifts and the calling of Elohim are not to be repented of. For as you also at one time disobeyed Elohim, but now have obtained compassion through their disobedience. So also these have now disobeyed, that through the compassion shown you, they might obtain compassion. For Elohim has shut them all up to disobedience in order to have compassion on all.
Baruch atah Yehovah, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu hadavar ha'emet, v'chayei olam natan t'tikenu. Baruch atah Yehovah, asher natan lanu Mashiach Yehoshua, v'ha'ketivim v'talmudim. Blessed are you, Yehovah, He who blessed our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, may he bless Jared ben Abraham, because he has come up to read from the second writings in honor of Messiah and his teachings. As a reward for this, may the Holy One, the Father of our Messiah, blessed is he, protect him and rescue him from every trouble and distress, from every plague and illness, and may he send blessing and success in his every endeavor, together with all Israel, his brethren. Now let us respond.
Amen.
If you'll stand and join me for the Etz Chaim Hi. Etz Chaim Hi, Lama Kazikim Ba, Veto Me'amea, Musha, Darakeha, Darkei Noah, Veto Nativoteha, Shalom, Hashivanu Yehovah, Alecha Vanashuva, Kadesh, Kadesh Yameinu, Kadesh Yameinu, Kekehem. It is a tree of life to those who take hold of it, and those who support it are praiseworthy. Its ways are the ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are peace. Bring us back, Yehovah, to you, and we shall come, renew our days as of old. This concludes the Torah service. You may be seated.
I talk a little bit too much with my hands for the handheld mic. All right, we are going to do something, start off today with something a little interesting, a little different, and Wendy is going to come up and share for us some of her testimony, which is not something that we do very often, and I'm so grateful to her, and anyway, we're going to let her come up before we get into the portion here. So, and then did you want to use the handheld?
Okay, can you hear me now? Devin and I had been speaking, and one of the things that we talked about was the fact that sometimes we neglect talking about how much we love Yeshua, because with learning the Torah, we focus so much on how much we love Yahweh. So when we look back on our lives, we want to make sure that we continue walking in our relationship with Yeshua. So she asked me to speak this morning and talk about how did I fall in love with Yeshua? What do I remember about that? And for me, and everyone's experience is different, it started very, very young. The first thing I remember was I was probably about 6 years old because my brother was just an infant. He had just been born, and my sister and I had the chicken pox. And I heard my mom talking about it with her friend, that she was very concerned if my brother got it, that it would kill him. And so I remember praying to Jesus that if he would just spare my brother, that I was willing to get his share of chickenpox, for him to give it to me worse so that he would live and not die. And that happened. I got the chickenpox worse, and he didn't get them barely at all. He just had a few. And so for me, that meant that he heard me and he listened to me, and therefore I knew beyond all doubt that he was real. And in my household, my family did not take us to church, but we had a grandmother that did. And I only remember going a few times, but it was enough for my young heart to let me know a little bit more about him. I learned some Bible stories, and to me, it was such an important thing because my parents went through divorce when I was 6 and 7, and it tore apart our family, of course, as divorce does. But for me, I just held on to him because I knew that from the songs that we were learning that he loved me, and that even when everything else was not going well, that I could hold on to him, and that he would be with me when I was frightened, and that he would never let go of me. So as I grew older, in school there were people that did believe in the Bible, and then there were the people who didn't. And a lot of times the people who believed in the Bible were kind of outcast. I was raised out west in Arizona, and it wasn't the Bible Belt out there. And I found myself clinging to the people that did believe the Bible and allowing myself to be an outcast because I didn't really care that they didn't like me. I wanted to be with those who believed in the Bible. And there were times that I actually snuck out my window not to do something bad, but to go to church because they had things going on. So I would sneak out my window and go that way because my mom didn't want to take me to church or to let me go, so that's what I would do. And as I grew older, I decided that it was very important for me to read the Bible all the way through. And so in my late teens, I started reading it all the way through. And I think I was maybe 19 by the time I finished it, and I was checking off each book in the beginning of the forward and checking them off. I remember learning something else. I remember falling in love with the God of the Bible. And I walked outside, and I remember looking up into the heavens and saying, I wish I was a Jew to have that God as my God and to have that history. And then, of course, it took me almost all of my life to come to a point where I realized he is our Elohim. We can be considered the children of Israel, and that his name is Yahweh or Yahovah or whichever way that you pronounce it, that anyone who chooses to be obedient to his laws and to his commands and is willing to be in the kingdom with him, that we can all become the children of Israel, and that his house is a house of prayer for all people, that I can have the greatest amount of love for his son Yeshua, which of course is his Hebrew name, that I can have the greatest amount of love for him, the son of Yahweh, the son of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who came to earth and died for my sins. I can have that great love and attachment because he never left me through all of the things that I've walked through in my life. He's never left me. But then neither has his Father, because he loved us so much that he sent his son here to die for us. And I have also the greatest amount of love for him. And especially when I realize how much they have done for us. And I think that it's so important that we continue to have that testimony for people. And the scriptures say that in order to have everlasting life, when you read the book of Revelation over and over and over again, it says that we must have the testimony of Yeshua and we must keep the commands. And so those two things walk hand in hand. And we never want to get so caught up in just doing the Torah, keeping the commands, that we forget to our love that we had in the beginning, that love for Yeshua and the love for our Heavenly Father. So that's the testimony I want to share today.
Thank you so much, Wendy. That was awesome. So as she said, Wendy and I have been talking, and last week we were kind of talking about our personal Genesis stories, and I think we were both pretty surprised to find that story about when we first fell in love with Yeshua was not really on the tips of our tongues. We both kind of had to go, I got to think about that some, and that's a disgrace. That's really not acceptable, because in 1 Peter it says to set Yahweh your Elohim aside in your hearts and be always ready to give an accounting to anyone asking you about the expectation that is in you. And of course, that expectation that we're talking about is the expectation of our deliverance, of our salvation through Yeshua. And so, you know, it was kind of a good exercise for us. And I think we hear a lot about, you know, how people came to the Torah. I think for a lot of us, it was questioning the Sabbath, but maybe not, maybe something different. And maybe for you, coming to Yeshua and coming to Torah was the same thing, but maybe not. And I just, you know, we've been hearing some kind of disturbing reports coming out of the Messianic community lately about you know, a lot of people that are walking away from Yeshua, and a lot of kids who are coming up in Messianic churches who don't have that real intimate connection, like that relationship like Wendy was talking about, where you just know, like the love of a child, right? It says, come to me like a little child. And that's really been weighing on my heart a lot. And I just want to bring to us to remembrance what the messenger gave to the church of Ephesus in Revelations, when he says, I know your works and your labors and your endurance, and that you are not able to bear evil ones, and have tried those who say they're emissaries but are not, and have found them false, and you have been bearing up and have endurance and have labored for my name's sake. Doesn't that sound like us? We've labored and not become weary. But I hold this against you, that you have left your first love. So remember where you have fallen, and repent and do the first works, or else I shall come to you speedily and remove your lampstand from its place, unless you repent. And that's just really scary. We do not want our lampstand removed, and I'm going to do everything that I can to keep that lampstand burning bright, at least in Balak, in this place. And that being said, if there's anybody else who would like to share their testimony, I think this is something that we can do over the next couple months. Get with me, and I'd be happy to schedule a time for you, just to do, you know, just something short like what Wendy did. And even if you don't want to come up in front and give it, think about it anyway, and think of it as an exercise in remembering your first love, right? Not to forget your first love. So, you know, let that be on the tip of your tongue. Just saying. And for the record, I talked to Robert this morning, and he said if people want to give testimonies but they don't want the camera on, we can do that too, okay? So we can just block it for a few minutes or whatever. So just keep that in mind in case that was swaying your opinion one way or another. All right, so on to today's Midrash. All right, so today we are in Bimidbar, which is, let me see if I can, maybe that will be better. Which is Numbers, right? So we're starting in chapter 22, and it goes all the way through kind of the first part of 25. This portion is called Balak. Balak means to lay waste, or destroyer, or devastator, or pretty much any derivative of really bad dude, right? Just keep that in mind. And we start this portion with Balak, who is the king of Moab, seeking a sorcerer to come and curse Israel for him. So I'm going to read, and today, please keep the portion handy, because I have a lot of reading, and so in order to make it fast, if I'm calling on people, so they can quickly pick up a verse. So starting in 22, verse 4. And Moab said to the elders of Midian, now this company is licking up all that is around us as an ox licks up the grass of the field. Now Balak, son of Zippor, was sovereign of the Moabites at that time. And he sent messengers to Bilam, son of Beor, at Pethor, which is near the river in the land of the sons of his people, to call him, saying, see, a people has come from Mitzrayim. See, they have covered the surface of the land and are settling next to me. And now, please come at once. Curse these people for me, for they are too strong for me. It might be that I strike them and drive them out of the land, for I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and he whom you curse is cursed. So, based on what we're reading here, is the microphone making weird noises? Robert, is there something I can do to make it better, or? All right, we're going to try it a few more minutes, and if it still is bad, I'll switch to the handheld. Okay, maybe that will help. I think Wendy's onto something there. It's probably the metal in my buttons.
There you go.
Did that fix it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's on. Okay, so we know he's scared of them, and we know that he desires the power and the land and everything. But really, it's kind of interesting because actually, what we're seeing is kind of this sort of visceral, deep-seated fear of the Israelites, and it comes from this irrational place in him that looks out and sees them. And even though they're minding their own business, that says the Israelites are standing in the way of everything that you want and everything that you can accomplish and all the land that you could have, right? And we see this over and over again throughout history. This is the same kind of just deep-seated hatred that caused Pharaoh to look out at Israel and say, see, the people of the children of Israel are more and stronger than we. Come, let us act wisely toward them, lest they increase. And it shall be, when fighting befalls us, that they shall join our enemies and fight against us, and shall go up out of the land. Now, at this time, was there any indication whatsoever that Israel was trying to rise up in Mitzrayim and come against Pharaoh? There was no indication. By all accounts, they were fat and sassy, as we like to say. Okay? So he looks at him and he sees these numbers, and it's this, and he just gets this feeling, right? Even though they're just trying to mind their own business, and it's kind of strange, this seemingly inbred hatred of a people that has really plagued Israel kind of throughout time, right? Right, exactly. Have you ever been talking to somebody about, I don't know, the world or life or religion or politics or something, some deep conversation, and you guys are getting on just fine, and you're thinking, yeah, great, I agree with you, that everything is good. Then all of a sudden they come in with like, but if it weren't for those greedy Jews or something like that, and you're like, whoa, this totally took a turn. Like, I thought we were on the same page here. And it's amazing that you can be on the same page with so much. But you've met people in your life that for no reason, for some irrational fear in their mind, that Israel's standing in the way of everything that they could have or everything that they want, right? You've seen that, and we see it today. And what does that tell us? That this is a persistent problem. It tells us that Israel's fight is not against flesh and blood, but it's against spirits and principalities. Remember Ephesians 6, do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but your fight is against principalities, authorities, against the world rulers of darkness of this age, against spiritual matters of wickedness in the heaven. And that makes sense, right? That we should still be dealing with this today, and even us, because we're part of Israel, as we read, and we read in Romans 11, and as Wendy talked about, you know that if you come into covenant with him, that you have grafted in. And, he said, I'll bless and protect you, and you say, great, all you say that we shall do. And so it's just the same for us now. And just as the Israelites kind of had to withstand this irrational hatred, so do we today. So did Yeshua's disciples. What did he tell them? He said, if the world hates you, understand that it first hated me, or hated me before you. If you were of the world, then the world would love you as its own. However, because you are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of it, the world hates you. Okay, that's in John 15. So what does it mean to be not of the world?
You're not worldly. You don't worship idols. You keep the Father's laws, and it is the separation of the peoples. The Father's law is that rod.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, so when you choose to be a part of Yahweh's people, whom he calls his treasured possession, then you are essentially distinguishing yourself, you're setting yourself apart, and you are putting a target on your back. So expect vitriol, okay? Expect hatred. Because the world, they don't like things that are different. And they don't like things that challenge their authority. But more than anything, what I see is that they don't like things that challenge their desire of the flesh. Okay? And even if it's entirely unprovoked, as many times in history that we've seen it is, like with Israel and Pharaoh and with Moab and Israel, you know, it's like they're over here minding their own business, or with the Jewish state today, they're over there minding their own business. They're like, I just want to keep my laws, like, well, just let me do my thing, right? But people still coming at them, people still hate them. It's because the world has told these people, oh, you're only human, you know, no one's perfect, so don't even try. Why would you try if you can't achieve it? You're not perfect. Have you heard this old one? If it feels good, do it, right? Or whatever you're feeling, act on it, because anything less would be to deny your truth, okay?
The one that I think is the worst is like you only regret the things that you haven't tried, and that is so not true, but so many people say that, you know, like what you really regret is the things that you did that were wrong.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, good point.
But they try to make you think that, oh, just try anything.
Oh, you've heard them all, right? I'm sure you've heard them all. And these are the lies that the world's telling them. And I keep hearing this phrase, this pop culture phrase, my truth. It's becoming very ubiquitous now, right? My truth. You guys have heard this, right? Okay, but then unfortunately, they look over at a community of believers. They look over at Israel. They look over at us as being grafted into Israel. And they see us not practicing if it feels good, do it, but practicing self-control and restraint and denial of the flesh, right? And that kind of flies in the face of all of these lies, hold on, Leslie, that they have been told all these years that they're so desperate to cling to. And I don't blame them. It's not the little people. It's the lies that they're being told. I want to believe it too. I would love to believe that you can just do anything you want at any time and there's literally no consequences. And that would be awesome. But the fact of the matter is, no matter how much you extol the virtues of your truth, there is only one truth, okay? And there is only one God, and that's Elohim. And he gave us this whole book of truth to live by. So, sorry about it, truth. Go ahead, Leslie.
The darkness will always hate the light, and so long as that the light is there, it shines light on their own wickedness, and it's almost as if you just doing your own thing becomes a rebuke to them. But that's what it's supposed to do, because it says you are to be a light to the darkness. And I don't know about y'all, but I have even lost friends over, okay, that's what you're doing, but this is what I'm going to do. And I'm not sticking my nose in your stuff, but it's still, that's what it's supposed to do. I mean, it is a reproach, even though you're just telling them the truth.
Or even if you're just living
Right.
it.
I mean, it's just,
That's what I'm talking about. They are under the impression that they should practice all the desires of their flesh, but when they see people who practice denying the flesh, then they realize that they've been lied to, and it makes them mad. It makes them mad. Go ahead, Wendy.
And no matter what they say or how many times they say it, there are consequences for them just living any way they want, and they will face them on this side of things as well as afterwards.
Yeah. So we know there's only one truth and there's only one Elohim. Even our sorcerer in today's portion, which I'm sorry we have not really gotten to yet, has said, what can I say? Can I say anything I want? I must speak the message that Yahweh puts in my mouth. He didn't care about Israel. he didn't care about cursing them. He would have slept soundly at night knowing that they were living out their cursed existence, right? But yet even he is saying, just because I want something to be true doesn't make it true, right? Even he's saying that, and he doesn't care about Yahweh. I think Bilam, he recognizes that he cannot escape the omnipotence of our Father. And I think that everyone else deep down recognizes that too, and it scares them. That's what causes this irrational fear. And look, it may or may not be worth noting. I don't know that it would be if everyone here is pretty mature, but it may or may not be worth noting that just because somebody maybe doesn't like you, or maybe you're getting some sort of criticism, or you're in a disagreement with someone, doesn't necessarily mean you're in this like spiritual warfare state, right? I once listened to a pastor say that you should take every criticism that you get seriously. Take it seriously, evaluate it, and then decide, was it baseless, or is it something that you can actually apply to your life? Because not every criticism is bad. So, just throwing that out there too. You don't want to mistake these two things. We're talking about this hatred that comes from a place that really stems from their own insecurity, right? And Yeshua, of course, when that's what he's addressing, not just common disagreements or maybe just somebody just doesn't like you very much. That's not what he's talking about. And his words, look, just to read them one more time, I want to read them one more time. He says, if the world hates you, understand that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love you as its own. However, because you are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of it, the world hates you. Okay, those words that Yeshua speaks to us, they're not meant to scare you or deter you from the word, from this life, but they're meant to encourage you, okay? Remember back in Exodus when Yahweh was telling Moshe he was going to go up against Pharaoh, and yet every time Moshe went up against Pharaoh, he was thwarted. And every time he approached him, like Pharaoh was like, no, dude, not doing it. And Moshe comes back to Yahweh, and Yahweh says, I've hardened Pharaoh's heart. Why did he tell him that? He told him that for the same reason that Yeshua is telling us. Don't worry, it's about me. He's saying, take heart. You did what you were supposed to do. You're doing what you're supposed to do. Now stand back and let me work, basically. And that's good, because then Moshe isn't just sitting there wondering, have I done something wrong? Did I mess up the instructions? Or maybe even worse, something like, has Yahweh abandoned me in this task? Okay? That's why Yahweh comes to him and he tells him, take heart. I hardened Pharaoh's heart. You did what you were supposed to do. This is how it's supposed to go, And it's the same way for us. Yeshua is telling us, keep on your path. Stay on your path. Be steadfast. Stick to the plan. Okay? I haven't left you. We haven't forsaken you. We haven't left you. We're still here. They hate you because they hate me, okay? This is about me. Now stand back and let me work. Okay? And later on in that passage, in John 15, Yeshua goes on to say, remember the word I spoke to you. A servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they shall persecute you too. If they had guarded my word, they would guard yours too. But all this they shall do to you because of my name, because they do not know him who sent me. So it's not for us in the community to be afraid of the world or the hatred of the world or what they say about us, okay? It is only for us to fear Yahweh. That is our only that is the only thing that we should fear. That is our only job. And it's so funny to me, talking about some of the old tropes that they like to throw out. It's so funny when people want to go around sinning under this blanket of only God can judge me. Have you heard this? I'm sure you've all heard this. They say, oh, only God can judge me. And in my mind, what I think is, right. And that's why you should be scared right now. Me judging you, what can I do? What authority and power do I have to hurt you? But the fact that you're saying only God can judge, that should scare the ever-living doo-doo out of you. That's what I'm saying, man. Like, you know what I mean? they got it all backwards. Remember, he says, don't fear those who can kill the body, but can't kill the soul. But fear me who can kill both body and soul in hell. Okay? So our only job is just to fear him and not the words of the people. And look, we could go on and on about this all day, but we're going to move forward into the portion unless there's any more comments about that. But do people see, do you guys see how the point that I'm trying to make about how this relates to our proportion today with Balak? You know, Balak sees Israel as this existential threat for reasons that really have more to do with his own insecurity than the actual threat that Israel is presenting to Moab, which, for the record, is none, really, right? Okay, so for one thing, Israel wasn't to contend with the Moabites. In a few chapters, and we'll see this a little later, but I'm sure if it had been necessary, Yahweh would have brought it up much sooner. But in a few chapters, Yahweh tells the Israelites, don't distress Moab or store yourselves up against them in battle, for I do not give any of their land as your possession. Any of their land as your possession. And just for the record, they also weren't supposed to stir themselves up or distress themselves with the descendants of Esau or the Ammonites, right? Okay, why?
They're distant kin.
Yeah, because the Moabites are the descendants of Lot, Abraham's nephew, and so they are essentially the cousins of Israel, and as such, they are afforded certain provisions. Okay.
The Edomites,
Esau, the descendants of Esau, the Ammonites, and the Moabites, both of which were the descendants of Lot by his two daughters. Okay, so
Esau, Jacob and Esau.
yeah, okay. So we know they weren't given a lot of provisions, though, right? I mean, God said they're not to be in this assembly. The Moabites and the Ammonites are not to join. We know he didn't want them mingling in the Israelite community unless, like Ruth, they completely disavowed their gods and said to Yahweh, I want you to be my only God, and I want to follow all your laws and your statutes, and AKA everything you say I shall do, right? Okay, so in that case, they are no longer a Moabite or an Ammonite. They are part of Israel, okay? But just as they are, Yahweh doesn't want them mingling with the community of Israel. And we're going to see why at the end of this portion. We're going to see how dangerous that is. So, but either way, Yahweh has provided for them this land, and he tells Israel, basically, don't bother, okay? That land is not for you. It's not worth the manpower. It's not worth the weapons. Don't stir yourselves up against them, okay? Just move along. Not that if they had been provoked by Moab, that doesn't mean that Israel couldn't, shouldn't, or wouldn't have completely crushed them. And I think Balak knows this. He has seen the military prowess of the Israelites. Just one chapter ago, they took out Og of Bashan. They took out the sovereign of the Amorites, Shihon, and they took over possession of the land of the Amorites. Okay, so Balak knows what they can do, and he's scared, and he wants to take them out, but he knows he doesn't have the power to do it on his own. Again, not that he needed to, but, you know. So he sends this attaché, gets this idea, like, okay, I'm going to weaken them through a curse. So he sends his attaché over to a diviner in Peor known as Bilam, right? And, Pether, sorry, who apparently has a reputation for doing this kind of thing, right? When Balak's men come to him, he says, I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and him whom you curse is cursed. He tells Bilam that in verse 6, in 22 verse 6. So he obviously kind of has a reputation for doing this kind of work. And that's just really interesting phraseology there, right? About, you know, he who you bless will be blessed, and he who you curse is cursed. Because Balak is actually speaking truthfully right here. What Bilam says is going to be true. When he blesses them or curses them, it's going to come true. Now, it won't be his truth, unfortunately, right? It's not going to be his truth, but it makes me think, you know, Balak himself almost kind of prophesies over Israel at this point, because what he's saying is going to come true. And of course, we hear this exact same phraseology, right? For the first time, where? In Genesis 12, in Bereshith 12, is where we first hear this kind of very similar phrase. When Yahweh is making his covenant with Abraham for the first time, and he says, I shall make you a great nation and bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. And I shall bless those who bless you and curse him who curses you. And in all the clans of the earth shall be blessed through you. Okay? And we know all the clans of the earth will be blessed through Israel based on the previous sentence by them either blessing or cursing Israel, right? That's the mechanism through which they will be blessed. So it's kind of interesting that Balak uses those terms. And then in Bereshith 22, a little bit further on, Yahweh kind of expounds on that proclamation a little bit after the incident with Isaac. And so Yahweh kind of goes and further tells Abraham, because you have not withheld your son, your only son, that I shall certainly bless you, and I shall certainly increase your seed as the stars of the heavens and the sands on the seashore, and let your seed possess the gates of their enemies. And in your seed, all the nations of the earth shall be blessed because you have obeyed my voice. Okay, so it's the same blessing, but he kind of expounds on it a little bit. So at the very least, we know it's not a coincidence that Balak is speaking these words, right? The fact of the matter is that Israel's fate has already been sealed, okay? It was sealed long before Pharaoh came along, long before Balak, long before Hitler, long before any of the things that are lobbed against Israel today. All right, their fate is sealed. You may as well take your hatred and throw it in the trash because it means nothing as far as the events of the future, okay? And Balak has done nothing but repeat his father's words. So he says this to Bilam, and his people meet Bilam, which, by the way, means not of the people, or sometimes people say like destroyer of the people. It's kind of interesting. We're not going to get into this at all, but it's kind of interesting because there are many references to Bilam in the scriptures, and some of them reference this one particular because they say son of Beor, but sometimes they don't name him by that genealogy. And so kind of an interesting sort of thought has popped up that maybe that name, that Bilam, has become a euphemism or more of like a title, essentially just for like sorcery or magicians, or basically pagan practices that Israel for some reason falls prey to over the years. Okay, so sometimes so you have to look at that particular instance if they're just talking about sorcery or whatever. It's kind of interesting, but we're not really going to get into that. So, all right. So Balak's men, they come to meet Bilam. They attempt to bribe him to come out for the purpose of cursing Israel. And Bilam at first, okay, whether he thinks he can squeeze some more money out of these guys or whether he's just kind of like lazy, he's kind of like, I don't know. Why don't you spend the night and I'll think about it and I'll bring back word to you as Yahweh speaks to me. Okay, and guess what? Elohim does come and meet with him. And what does he say? What does he say the first time? Don't go with him. Right? Okay, look, instead of me just paraphrasing this entire verse, let's go ahead and read 22. Someone hop in there for me. Starting in 7, and just go until I say stop.
And the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian left with the fees for divination in their hand, and they came to Bilam and spoke the words of Balak to him. And he said to them, spend the night here, and I shall bring back word to you as Yahweh speaks to me. So the heads of Moab stayed with Bilam. And Elohim came to Bilam and said, who are these men with you? And Bilam said to Elohim, Balak, son of the sovereign of Moab, has sent to me, saying, see, a people has come out of Mitzrayim and cover the surface of the land. Come now, curse them for me. It might be that I am able to fight against them and drive them out. And Elohim said to Bilam, do not go with them. You do not curse the people, for they are blessed. And Bilam rose in the morning and said to the heads of Balak, go back to your land, for Yahweh has refused to allow me to go with you. And the heads of Moab arose and went to Balak and said, Bilam refuses to come with us. Then Balak again sent heads more numerous.
Okay, hold on. Let's stop there. Let's talk about that for a second. But Put a pin in it. Okay. So at first, Elohim does give himself, presents himself before Bilam, and he tells him, don't go with them. Why? Because they're already blessed. He's basically saying, like, there is no point in you going over there. These people are already blessed, okay? There's no reason for you to go. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Then Balak again sent heads, more numerous and more esteemed than they. And they came to Balaam and said to him, This is what Balak, son of Zippor, said. Do not be withheld from coming to me, please, for I esteem you very greatly, and whatever you say to me I do. Therefore, please come curse these people from me. And Balaam answered and said to the servants of Balak, Though Balak were to give me his house filled with silver and gold, I am unable to go beyond the word of Yehovah, my Elohim, to do less or more. And now please, you also stay here tonight and let me find out what more Yehovah says to me. So it's sort of like, I guess, let me see if I can talk him into it. To me. And Elohim came to Balaam at night and said to him, If the men come to call you, rise and go with them. But only the word which I speak to you, that you do. And Balaam rose in the morning and saddled his donkey and went with the heads of Moab.
Okay.
So
Do one more.
I was supposed to say there's more, but the displeasure of Elohim burned because he went, and the messenger of Yahweh stationed himself in the way as an adversary against him. More? Okay.
Well, just finish that verse.
Okay.
And he was riding on his donkey, and his two servants were with him.
Yes.
Okay. So.
I just hopped on this stuff and said, okay. Go.
Well, so it's really funny, right? Okay, so the men come back. So he sends them away the first time. The men come back with even greater riches and even greater flattery. Oh, we esteem you so much, right? And they proposition him again, as we just read in 15 through 19. And Bilam, he plays this kind of smart, right? Because listen to what he says in verse 18. He says, And Balak answered and said to the servants of Balak, Though Balak were to give me his house filled with gold and silver, I am unable to go beyond the word of Yahweh, my Elohim, to do less or more. And so Balaam is kind of playing this humble, contrite servant of Yahweh, but it's all an act. How do we know this? Because he says to him, I can only say that which Yahweh has told me to say, but he conveniently leaves out the fact that Yahweh has already told him what to say up in verse 12. He already says, don't go with them because those people are blessed already. There's nothing you can do. But instead of telling the men that, instead of telling them, I can't go with you because those people are already blessed, he plays it kind of cagey, right? He kind of leaves that part out. He says, I can only say, if I only had a house filled with gold and silver, and he kind of plays it kind of smart, right? You kind of get this picture of sort of an oily little car salesman trying to drive his price up, And so that's why I think in verse 22, okay, which Leslie just read, that at that point, even though Yahweh has told him to go with him, the displeasure of Elohim burned because he went.
He told him only if they come.
The second time he says it's okay, go.
He said if they come to get you, then they
Right, they never come. It was like he couldn't wait to go with them.
Well, yeah, that was his angle the whole time, right? Like the whole contrite act was basically just to drive the price up, essentially. So let's see. All right, so Yahweh, he gets mad at Balaam, and Balaam's really not being honest with them about what's going to happen when he gets there, right? He kind of is leaving it up like as though there's a possibility that he could potentially still curse them. Like he's not really being honest about what's going to happen when he gets there. And that's, he's essentially mocking Yahweh in this. And so we see Yahweh sends this messenger. And this is where it kind of starts to get good. This is where it really starts to get good. So this messenger is a mercy to him. Okay, let's look at this. Let's unpack this a little bit. Okay, so we can see Balaam, he's not taking this situation seriously at all. he's kind of like playing this role, you know. And he goes as so far as to tell these men in verse 18, I'm unable to go beyond the word of Yahweh, my Elohim, to do less or more. But is there any evidence that Yahweh actually is his Elohim?
Well, he obviously had some power, be it from Yehovah or be it from somewhere else, because it said already that if you curse somebody, they're cursed. If you bless, they're blessed. So he had some authority from somebody.
Right, okay, so we know that,
Well, he didn't get scared when Yehovah spoke to him. He wasn't terrified and like saying, "Who are you? Why you're speaking to me?" So obviously, he has had conversations with Elohim, regardless
Yes.
of where that's come from.
so the argument that I'm going to make is that Bilam is entirely sincere. He says that Yahweh is his Elohim, and he means it. As you mentioned, right? We have this established relationship. Like we know that he has a relationship with Yahweh. He speaks to him. He seeks advice from him. Okay, he is somewhat concerned about sinning. You know, he gets scared when he gets caught, basically. But he stopped short. Bilam stopped short of actually doing any of the things that God tells him would make him called by his name. Does that make sense? So I want to argue, even though Bilam says Elohim is or Yahweh is my Elohim, which I think he believes, if you scan through Scripture, there is nowhere where Yahweh says, and Bilam is my people. Do you see what I'm saying? He says, I have chosen you, and we chose him right back. But because Yahweh lays out a very clear way that his people are to live if we want to be called by his name, right? By following the commandments. You know, he talks specifically about the Sabbath. You know, by this you'll be sanctified for all eternity. They'll know that you're my people. And he talks about, in the New Testament, love for your brothers. They'll know you're my disciples if you show love for your brothers. And just in general, keeping his commandments. But there is no evidence of Bilam keeping Yahweh's commandments or living in the way that Yahweh has told him to live in order to be called by his name. Does that make sense? And so, can you be considered a member of God's people if you don't do the things that God tells you to do? I mean, let me rephrase. Okay, can you stamp yourself with the name and the seal of Yahweh if you refuse to do any of the things that he says is going to stamp you and seal you in his name? Go ahead, Dennis.
I mean, Bilam's name itself means not
of the people.
So
Exactly.
his name he can't get away from that if he tries. I mean, he's not of the people. But Father uses him, obviously.
Sure.
And
He uses a donkey too. Go ahead, Wendy.
Regarding the donkey, if the donkey had not seen the messenger said he would have killed him.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that. So it's just interesting, right? I mean, he calls him his Elohim, and I believe him. I think he thinks that. But if you're not living in a way that would make him he's not calling you my people, okay? And if Yahweh requires and desires and requires obedience, okay? If you don't believe me, read 1 Samuel, okay? And so this whole scene with the messenger and the donkey plays out. And it's this very merciful warning to Bilam. And the messenger appears before his face 3 times. But he's so out of touch. He's so not in touch with him that he doesn't even see him. And he gets pissed at his donkey for trying to alert him to this presence. 3 times he denies the messenger. How many times did Peter deny him? How many times have we denied him? Okay? 3 times he denies him. And the messenger tells him, why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? See, I've come out to stand against you because your way is reckless before me. Okay, so to me, this also kind of points to this sort of preemptive warning that Bilam didn't really have any intention of saying what Yahweh was going to tell him to say when he got there, because he's telling him right now, your way is reckless before me. I know you're talking a big game about how you can only say what I'm telling you to say, but I don't think that's your plan at all, buddy, essentially. All right, so 33. The donkey saw me and turned aside from me these 3 times. If she had not turned aside from me, I certainly would have killed you by now and let her live. So what's the message? What's the message that the messenger is giving? He says, okay, you can deny me for a time. Okay? But the longer you wait, the harder it's going to be for you. And if you never open your eyes to me at all, you're dead. And of course, we're talking about our eternal death, our eternal life, okay? He says, if you don't see me at all, if you never opened your eyes to me at all, I'm going to kill you. And are you kind of beginning to see this parallel that I'm sort of trying to draw here with Bilam? Okay, let me just be really, really clear, okay? Bilam, he loves to kind of brandy about the name of Yahweh when it's convenient for him, when he thinks it gives him authority or something like that. But he refuses to live by any of Yahweh's rules. He misses the messenger. And he almost lost his life because of it. Are we seeing this now? Okay? If this isn't a parallel to the modern day church, I don't know what is, okay? Because they love to say, to use the name of Yahweh or Jesus or whatever it is, whatever way they know to call on the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They love to use it at their convenience, but they don't actually want to live in a way that he's called you to live. And they're going to end up like the 5 foolish virgins. Do you remember that? They're going to end up like the 5 foolish virgins going back to the city to get oil for their lamp while all their prepared friends are going in to meet the bridegroom. Okay, so what's the message? Prepare yourself so you don't miss him, so you don't miss the messenger. How do you prepare yourself? By studying the word and practicing it. By studying it and practicing it, okay? So luckily, Bilam finally does see the messenger. And to his credit, it kind of wakes him up, right? He does get kind of scared here. And he says, I have sinned, for I didn't know you stood in front of me, right? He's like, I would have just denied like somebody else, but I didn't know you stood in the way against me. It says, and now, if it's evil in your eyes, let me turn back. He's like, okay, I think he gets it now, right? Like he knows he messed up. And he may not have been taking this very seriously before, but he's taking it seriously now. And so the messenger says, no, go on. But remember, only say the words that I speak to you, okay? So Bilam and Balak, they go up to the mountain surrounding kind of the Hebrew camp, and Bilam instructs Balak on making these sacrifices, which are not of Yahweh anyway. So I don't know if it's just like for the pomp and circumstance. I don't know. Anyway, so he goes up. He instructs him on building this altar and like making these sacrifices. Then he goes to this secluded area where he hears his first curse from Yahweh. Just kidding. It's not a curse, obviously. It's not a curse. Come on, you guys. All right, so he goes and he gets his first word from Yahweh. And he goes back to Balak and he tells him, and we're just going to go ahead and read it. So if somebody wants to read 23, 6 through 10. Chapter 23, verses 6 through 10.
He went back to him, and there, standing by his burnt offering, he was the princess of Moab. He made his pronouncement. Balak, the king of Moab, brings me from Aram, from the eastern hills, saying, come, curse Yaakov for me. Come and denounce Israel. How am I to curse those whom Yahweh has not cursed? And how am I to denounce those whom Adonai has not denounced? From the top of the rocks I see them, and from the hills I behold them. Yes, a people that will dwell alone, and not think itself one of the nations. Who has counted the dust of Yaakov, or numbered the ashes of Israel? May I die as a righteous die, and may my end be like theirs.
Okay. So this is kind of the first blessing. It really sort of starts in 9. He's kind of building up to it. He comes back and he tells him this, and Balak, he obviously gets upset. Okay, so he's expecting to hear a curse, even though Bilam, probably sincerely at this point, is trying to explain to him now, like, that he can't say anything that the Father has not put in his mouth. But what also struck me for the first time reading this is that Balak also seems to just be mad. And this relates to the first thing that we're talking about, this irrational fear. He seems to also get mad that he's not catching Israel in any sort of like combative mode, right? Balaam straight up tells him, like, from the hills I observed them, and look, a people dwelling alone, not reckoning itself among the nations. Like, basically, like, dude, there's like minding their own business over there. They're not trying to, like, I didn't see them sharpening spears. I didn't see them looking over plans of Moab or anything like that. Like, he tells them, they're just like doing their own thing. And Balak is like, no, not these are just the outer Israelites. They're a lot calmer. They're different. They're not the soldier. We got to go to this other place and find them. And to me, I'm wondering if he's kind of maybe starting to question the legitimacy of this mission. You know, he's kind of starting to see that this is a fool's errand. You know, he's like, I know we're going to catch him, you know, doing something, basically. So they go into the second location. And again, they set up this altar, and again, Balaam instructs Balak on how to bring these sacrifices, and then he goes off again, and he gets the second word from Yahweh. And he comes back to Balak and tells him, 18 through 24.
And he took up his proverb and said, Rise up, Balak, and hear. Listen to me, son of Zippor. El is not a man to lie, nor a son of man to repent. Has he said, and would he not do it? Or spoken, and would not confirm it? See, I have received blessed, and he has blessed, and I do not reverse it. And he has not looked upon wickedness in Yaakov, nor has he seen trouble in Israel. Yahweh his Elohim is with him, and the shadow of a sovereign is in him. El has brought them out of Mitzrayim, is for them like the horns of a wild ox. For there is no sorcery against Yaakov, nor is there any divination against Israel. Now it is said to Yaakov and to Israel, what has El done? Verse 24.
Mm-hmm.
Look, a people rises like a lioness, and lifts itself up like a lion. It lies not down until it devours the prey, and drinks the blood of the slain.
Okay. So this is our second sort of chunk of blessing. And again, Balak gets really mad because he wants his curse, dang it. But more than that, again, I really think this really popped out at me. And maybe I'm wrong here, but it really seems like he's trying to prove that Israel's up to no good. Because again, in 21, Balaam's like, I've looked down upon them. He has not looked upon wickedness in Yaakov, nor has he seen any trouble in Israel. So, like, they're not coming in, like, they're not trying to, right now at this particular moment or anything, you know, they're not getting their military, you know, formation organized or whatever. And it seems like, Balak is just determined to catch them being up to no good, and Balaam just won't give it to him. Okay, but the ironic part is that Israel was up to no good, right? We know that. They were plotting destruction, just not Moab's. Okay, because we're going to learn in a few chapters that they've started to take the women, they've started to have relations with the women of the Moabites and the Midianites, and then pretty soon they're going to be making sacrifices to them, eating their slaughterings, bowing down to their mighty ones, right? And
can I offer a different take on the whole thing?
Sure.
I see it a little bit different.
Wait, the whole thing? Because then we might want to wait till the end.
Yeah. First of all, Moab, they call them mighty ones. I hate to use that word. They had different gods. Yahovah had brought out this people to be his hand to destroy and run out people of the lands that they passed through that were evil. So,
and in a few chapters they do destroy Midian.
Moab had Balak had a reason to fear. He had already seen them destroy people, and that's what they did when they went somewhere, is people that got in their way, they destroyed them. They were held back by Elohim from destroying Moab. Is the reason they didn't destroy them.
Right.
But in their not destroying them, they took on their idols. And the parallel that we're supposed to get from that, what we're supposed to see, yes, even today, there are people who fear the followers of the true God. And they hate, that's the reason that the whole world hates Israel, is because he gave them his laws and statutes, and he represents what they're supposed to be, and they don't want to be that way. The world
Yep.
don't want to be that way. It's
Yeah.
a fear to them. It hates the parallel that we're supposed to get from the story is that we're supposed to remain the people of Israel
Yeah.
and not reach out to the surrounding nations, because what happened to Israel right here is that they joined themselves, they continually joined themselves to the
Yeah.
people of the land. If they didn't destroy them and get rid of them, get rid of their gods, then they took on their gods. And that's the lesson for us. Have that wall in between what the world does and who we are.
Well, I don't think that's any different than what I'm saying. I think that's exactly the point I'm making.
You were saying that they didn't have any reason to fear Israel. They should have feared Israel. They looked out there and there was millions of people there, and they were mighty people. They were mighty because God made them mighty.
Yeah.
But it was a legitimate reason to fear. And not only that, on a spiritual sense, their gods, their false gods, are the ones that put the fear in people. That's the reason the world hates us, is because they're not, the world, most of the time, they don't realize that they're worshiping idols.
Yeah.
They don't realize that they're God. They think, I'm a God. I don't have a God. There is no God. In saying that, they're still bowing down to a spiritual power. And that spiritual power is the one that puts it in their head that tells them, these people are the people of the real God. You don't want any part of that. Because, I mean, it's either Satan, or Yahweh. And, I mean, that's the two powers, the two major powers that's going on here. And Satan does not want his followers to go over where Yahweh is. So there's enmity between the two.
Well, but that's exactly what I'm saying. And I'm saying that the Israelites, they didn't guard themselves appropriately, even though they weren't supposed to strive with Moab, right? And that goes in all regards. Right. That, in fact, goes also to the fact that they weren't to strive to be like them, strive to take on their people, take on their gods, right?
Yeah, and there's another little parallel, too. See, we as believers in Yeshua, we're supposed to be separate from the world, and it leaves us being content in a place that's not ours. These people were in the wilderness, and they're coming out of Mizraim, and they're ready to settle. They want to get settled down. They've been wandering through the desert here, and they want food, and they want water, and they want this, and they want that. They want to, they don't like the journey that they're on, and it's a constant journey.
Yeah.
So they're wanting to settle in with this thing, and that's a parallel to us. We have to push away from the world and be content to give up things of the world to stay who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. That's exactly, and maybe I didn't make that clear, that's exactly the point I was trying to make earlier. We were talking about coming out of the world, and he says, I've chosen you out of the world, and we are not of the world, right? And Israel did exactly what you said. They didn't do what they were told not to do. They did strive with Moab, just not in the way that we thought. They didn't go to battle with them. They took their wives. That's exactly the point I'm making. They plotted their own destruction through their adultery with their gods. So when he looks down, he says, like, dude, they're just living their own way. That's the irony of the whole thing, because Yahweh's not letting Bilam curse them, but he doesn't have to, because they're cursing themselves by taking on the Midianite and the Moabite women. And that just goes to show that Yahweh, he never turns back on his promises, even though we do, right? In Ezekiel 20, he talks about this. He says that I didn't deal with Israel the way I should have for my name's sake. I dealt with them mercifully for my name. But in reality, Bilam didn't have to do the cursing. They were doing it to themselves. So it's just kind of ironic still. And it's like in the, I think we read in do we read in Malachi today about how he says that I'm not going to let other nations curse them, basically, because they're mine to essentially curse, or bless or whatever. Daphne, did you have a point? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this about Israel before
Yep.
nations and stuff.
It-
and
yeah,
I
it
did
gets to
all,
that point.
So to that point, isn't that what Balaam did to curse Israel, and that he told Balak, this is how you get them, get your women and how to seduce them, and then they'll, so I think that isn't happening when they're looking down at them at that point. I think it happens.
No, we're not
later.
there yet.
But doesn't it happen later? So I'm thinking, that's my only point, is like, when they're looking down at them, I don't even think they're doing that yet, but Balak knows that that's how you can get them.
So, right, so at the very end of this, Balaam does say to Balak, come here, I'll let you in on a little secret. After he's done all the things that Yahweh's told him to do. And he does kind of offer, and it's sort of convoluted. I read it a lot, but I didn't like super search it out because I knew I wasn't going to be talking about that part. To me, it's not real clear that that is what he's saying. I don't know if it was kind of just implied that that's the way to do it. You know, when we come to that, it's way later at the end of 24.
Yeah, like later on, like in a different portion, it
Yes.
comes back to when Balaam dies. Doesn't it kind of say that that's why he died?
Yeah, in Malachi it talks about the fact that Balaam told Balak how to destroy them, essentially. When I read it here in Numbers, that is not clear to me. And again in Revelations it talks about the sin that Balaam put on the camp of Israel. But again, that could be talking about the sin of just like divination and sorcery and pagan ways in general. Because to me, that's not really clear, but obviously I think that, if that is open up to interpretation. But to me, that was not clear that is exactly what this Balaam was saying. Because sometimes when you hear Balaam, he's talking about, it's a euphemism for like pagan ways, sorcery, divination, that kind of thing. Go ahead. In Revelations.
I hope I'm not jumping out of the
Yeah, we're way jumping, but it's okay. We'll get back. Go ahead.
All right. I think it was in Micah that we read today, but you were just touching on it. There were those.
Yeah, what was it? Yeah, in Micah.
There were those in Israel that did join themselves to Baal and Peor.
Yeah.
And basically they were committing fornication with the women, which was causing them to sin against the Father.
Right.
I think it's really important to see that even though the Father, for his name's sake, did not curse Israel, would not allow his people to be cursed as a whole for his name's
Right.
sake, those that did commit the sin, there was a plague that was brought upon them and they were killed for that.
Yes.
So individually, we aren't protected if we do something wrong. But as a people, there's always going to be a body of believers and a remnant that is going to be protected and kept faithful in his word. But we as individuals have to be careful to guard the commandments ourselves and to do what is right.
Okay, so I'm so glad you said that because you have brought us back to the path, Wendy. Way to go. That's exactly right. This sin, which we haven't really gotten there yet, but this sin with the Moabite women cost them 24,000. But who sent that plague? Yahweh said, I'm sending that plague. He doesn't allow Balaam still to curse them. He doesn't allow the nations to curse them, and that's what we read in Micah. There's still punishment. And we know they go all throughout history of many, many periods of being, on his hit list, you know what I mean? But he's saying, I'm going to do that to them. He sends that plague to them, right? And so that's exactly right. There's still punishment, right? And that's exactly what I'm trying to say is that, but the overarching theme is that he is still not reverting that blessing that he gave Abraham at the very beginning, that covenant. That is sealed. That is done. That is the way it will be because he made it with Abraham and all of his descendants. Okay, so that's exactly the point I'm trying to make. While there are individuals who did perish for that, many. This is the incident at Baal Peor is disgusting. It's horrible. It is a huge blight on like the history of our people, basically, right, of the Israelites. And but even though they were acting this way, Yahweh's still up there, and he says, no, sorry, Balaam, still can't do it. Let me handle it, basically. You know what I mean? All right, so just trying to finish this off here. I know we're running a little long. I'm trying to get to it. All right, so Balak decides to take Balaam to one more location that he thinks is just right for the cursing or whatever, okay? Again, he's like, no, you're not looking at the right people, okay? There's still bad ones in there, trust me. They're just over here, okay? So they take him to this next location. And again, they set up this altar, and again, they make these sacrifices, and again, Balaam goes and gets a word from Yahweh. And this time he comes back and he says, 24, 3-9. Anyone? Bueller?
And he took up his proverb and said, the saying of Balaam, son of Beor, and the saying of the man whose eyes are open, the saying of him who hears the words of El, who sees the vision of the Almighty, who falls down with eyes opened wide. How good are your tents, O Yaakov, your dwellings, O Israel. Like the waters that stretch out, like gardens by a river, like aloes planted by Yahweh, like cedars beside waters. He makes water flow from his buckets, and his seed is in many waters. His sovereign is higher than Agag, and his reign is exalted. To what?
Through 9.
El, who brought him out of Mitzrayim, is for them like the horns of a wild ox. He devours nations, his enemies, and he breaks their bones, and with his arrows he smites. He bows down, he lays down like a lion, and like a lion who would rouse him. Blessed is he who blesses you, and cursed is he who curses you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. So, if you look at all three blessings really, really carefully, you can kind of see that this third blessing is kind of a summary of the first two that kind of came before. He kind of sums it all up, and he ends it with this. Now, let's see. Blessed is he who blesses you, and cursed is he who curses you. I wanted to get it just right. So, of course, Balak gets mad again, and again, Balaam just falls back on his old default, and he tells him, did I not also speak to your messengers whom you sent to me, saying, if Balak should give me his house filled with silver and gold, I am unable to go beyond the word of Yahweh to do either good or evil of my own heart? What Yahweh speaks, that I speak. Okay, and now I kept thinking to myself, like, these blessings are really important, and like, what's the deal with them? And so you start looking at them more and more, and you start thinking like, hey, this looks kind of familiar. And let's just kind of, so you can kind of see them all in the third one, right? You can just look at that one and sort of break it down. But if you sort of look at the last little part of each of these blessings, okay? In verse 10 and 23, in the first one, he says, who shall count the dust of Jacob and the number of 1/4 of Israel? Basically saying Israel's going to be a great and numerous nation, okay? Skip down to the last part of the next blessing, okay, in verse 24. It says, look, this people rises like a lioness and lifts up like a lion and lies not down until it devours its prey and drinks the blood of its slain. They're going to lay waste to their enemies. That's what he's saying, okay? Then skip down again, down to 24, verse 9, and it says, he bowed down, he laid down like a lion, and like a lion, who would rouse him? Blessed is he who blesses you, and cursed is he who curses you. And when Balaam says, what Yahweh speaks, that I speak, it's like, no kidding. Where have we heard these exact same blessings before? We just read them earlier out of Breshith 22 with the incident with Isaac. Let me pull them out, right? Where are you? Come on. Oh, I don't remember. But I don't have the exact words in front of me. Okay. But the three parts of that blessing, after it with with Isaac, right? He says, I think it's 22:12, right? Or 17, somewhere in between there, somewhere. He tells him, because you have not withheld your son from me, 1, I'm going to increase your seed, and the members of you are going to be greater than the sands of the seashore and the stars in the sky. Then he says, 2, your seed will possess the gate of your enemies. And then 3, in your seed, all the nations will be blessed because those who are blessed you are going to be blessed, right? Okay, so we see, like, no kidding. Bilam is literally just repeating this blessing that has been said over Israel since the beginning of time, literally just reciting this. And it's actually kind of funny how much time and money and energy everyone really could have just saved by not going this whole thing just so that they can basically get repeated over them something that has already been true about them since their inception. Go ahead, Leslie.
It's 22, 16, and 17.
Thank you. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
And the messenger of Yahweh called to Abraham a second time from the heavens and said, By myself I have sworn, declares Yahweh, because you have done this and not withheld your son, your only son, that I shall bless you, and I shall certainly increase your seed as the stars of the heaven, and as the sands of and as the sand which is on the seashore, and let your seed possess the gate of their enemies. And in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so you can see that this whole affair was like totally pointless, just as Yahweh told him the first time. Don't go over there. They're already blessed, right? So everyone has just wasted like their time, their energy, their all of these things, all of these rams and goats that were slaughtered and everything, not to mention, right? And it's just really kind of ridiculous that Bilam could have stopped all this from the very beginning if he just said, like, they're already blessed. Let me just tell you what it says already about them, right? He could have just said it right then, but he doesn't. And so the fact of the matter is just the point I just want to take away is that what Yahweh has ordained cannot be undone, and he always sticks to his promises. Okay, even if we don't stick to ours, he's working the long game. Okay, guys, the long game. And the last thing that I just kind of wanted you to take away from this portion is that there is no truth other than his truth. Okay, so that's basically what I got out of this. So I appreciate the discussion. Are there more questions? I'm done. So go ahead, Wendy.
This is actually on another point that I picked up from the portion.
Okay, good. Leslie says she can't hear you.
Okay.
Do you need this?
We do. Just a second.
Sorry, guys. I know it's kind of hot in here. We're almost done.
While she's doing it, one little point.
Okay.
That blessing number 3 that you were talking about, in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, was also the prophecy of the Messiah.
Yeah, and he talks about that later on.
And that's the reason he can't curse the people who's bringing forth the seed of the Messiah. They're not going to be destroyed off. They brought him forth.
Yeah, it's the long game. Like I said, I mean, like Wendy was talking about, there's always going to be remnant that's preserved. I mean, that are going to stick true to his word, that'll be called his people.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Wendy.
Okay, well, of course, I'm not going to find it really easily, but it was talking about...
Paraphrase for us.
Okay, that's what we can get. It was talking about the fact that... hold on. I'm going to lose it. That we had to wait until the time when the time of the nations would be full.
Yeah, when their number is complete.
Okay, thank you. And, okay, that was in Romans. Okay, that's why I can't find it. Okay, so what is interesting about that is I had always thought that that had to do with the Gentiles, that we were waiting for the time for the Gentiles to be full. But actually, if there is a reference at the very bottom of that page, now that I know where it is, give me 1 second, and I will get there. Romans 11.
It's amazing because you have the microphone, but yet you're still talking so quietly.
Oh, you really? Okay. So this is the scripture. It says, "For I do not wish you to be ignorant of this secret, brothers, lest you should be wise in your own estimation. The hardening in part has come over Israel until the completeness of the nations has come in." All right, so it sounds like that for the nation of Israel or the Jews, that there would be a hardening of their heart perhaps toward the Messiah until the completeness of the nations has come in. So many times I've heard or thought or been taught that until the Gentiles have all accepted, then the Jews would have this hardness over their heart. But there's a reference down here which is very interesting. It's to Genesis chapter 48, verse 19. So flipping over there to Genesis 48, verse 19, we come to the point where Jacob is passing a blessing on to the sons of Joseph. And those two sons, of course, are Manasseh and Ephraim. And this is when he changes the hands. Normally he would have his right hand on the elder and left hand on the second son. But in 19 it says, "But his father refused and said, 'I know, my son, I know. But he also becomes a people and is also great, and yet his younger brother is greater than he, and his seed is to become the completeness of the nations.'" And so therefore it's saying that the completeness of the nations is actually the son of the children of Ephraim. And if I had gone a little further in Romans, it says, "Then all Israel will be saved." So the completeness of the nations and all of that is the gathering of the children of Ephraim from all of the nations. It's not having to do with the Gentiles and the collecting of.
No, but when you
that.
when you read in Revelations and he looks out and he sees the Israelites in front of him, then he looks out and he sees, and I also see
There is a
people
great
of many
crowd,
tribes and tongues and
which no man is able to number. So yes, there are going to be Gentiles that will accept and come in, but this particular verse actually is definitely referring to the gathering of the sons of Ephraim.
Well, and that makes sense, right? Because they have to reconcile before any of the things that are to happen, right? So that they're all spread out here, and we have to have them reconciled. Go ahead, Julie.
I was just going to add on to what you're saying. They were all dispersed into all the different nations. They were all dispersed into all the different nations, and so yeah, there's going to be the regathering back. But it is all of Israel. Yes.
It goes back to
the Milo Hatoim, the fullness of all the nations of Israel being.
Don't forget, anyone can be a part of Israel if you choose.
That's right.
You choose that.
Right.
But Yeshua, it goes back to what he said about, "I come for the lost sheep of the house of Israel." So that all fits perfectly together. But he also said, and there are others too that are here.
Well, just like fruit, with fruit, like you were
Absolutely.
saying earlier, whoever wants to be Israel can be Israel.
That mixed multitude that came out with Israel from Mitzrayim. Absolutely.
They're still being added to this day. Still being added. Israel is from all the nations.
And like we were talking about earlier with Ruth, it says the Moabites and the Ammonites are not to be in your assembly, but we know that Ruth was. So what does that mean? She was no longer a Moabite. She was now an Israelite. If you graft in, you don't say anymore, I'm a Moabite.
There's to be one for all.
You say, I am Israel. So, all right, guys, I know we've gone really long. I appreciate everyone's commentary today. Let's go ahead and to the repetition of the Shema. All right. Blessing over the bread and the wine.
broke it and gave it to them, saying, This is my body which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me.
Who wants to volunteer? Thanks, Leslie.
I'll let Lee go. Prayer for peace in Jerusalem, used Yahoo 62:6-7. I have set watchmen on your walls, O Jerusalem, all the day and all the night, continually, who are not silent. You who remember Yahweh, give yourselves no rest, and give him no rest till he establishes, until he makes Jerusalem a praise in the earth. Father Yahweh, that is a powerful prayer, because out of that, it to me is essentially telling us to pray for each other, pray for the people of the physical Jerusalem, and pray for all of the remnant and all of Israel, where they may be. And we know that by praying for you to come, it's also a double-edged sword, because part of us, we want to pray for more time, because more time means more people that can turn back, and more time for our words, and, well, not our words, your words sink in, but also we know that the day is coming, so we continue to pray for all these things, Yahweh, in Yeshua's name, amen.
Or if you'll stand and join us in Tehillim 67.
Elohim does favor us and bless us, cause his face to shine upon us, Selah. For your way to be known on earth, your deliverance among all nations. Let the peoples praise you, O Elohim. Let all the peoples praise you. Let the nations be glad and sing for joy. For you judge the peoples uprightly, and lead the nations on earth, Selah. Let the peoples praise you, O Elohim. Let all the peoples praise you. And the earth shall give her increase, Elohim,